Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. I'm very excited to be talking about our newest addition to the Feature Club, the Conversational Insights interface, this afternoon in this presentation called Chat Meets Stat, Quantification in Conversational Interfaces. I am very happy that so many of you have joined today and that this topic doesn't only interest me, but also many of you. So most of you have probably dealt with me in some kind of way already. I'm a techie by background, but today I'm here in my function as co-founder of Caplena, and specifically I'm here as having been part of the product team that worked intensively on these conversational interfaces over the past couple of months. And I will show you the fruits of our work here today and try to give you an understanding of their capabilities, but also their limits. I want to do this not in thin air, but applied in an applied way with a lot of examples. And the industry that we are going to work in today, or that we're going to use as example, is the airline industry. And we're going to use the airline industry for two reasons. First of all, one of our flagship clients, Lufthansa, has been serving as a sort of prototype customer for these kind of complex CX studies. And secondly, I think the airline industry makes it very well, or the challenges that are faced in the airline industry make the case for these conversational interfaces very well, because there you really have to break down a lot of complex information. But of course, I'm not going to share Lufthansa data here with you today, but we are going to work on example online reviews from Skytrax, about 10,000 reviews that we have collected on the airline industry. And those are the examples that are going to be part of this session today. So what kind of feedback are you dealing with? To introduce the topic, we are dealing with cases like Santiago, who says he lost his suitcase for $23,000. A tragic case. Another one, Zachary, who said he entered the plane normally, but left with a sore bum. Another tragic story here. And finally, a third example I want to share, that is Albert, who said flight was too late, seats too close together, snacks were nasty, but I got what I paid for, would use again. So these are a couple of introductory examples. Of course, they're not randomly picked. This was our very talented marketing team that chose these rather entertaining examples. If you look at these reviews in their raw state, what you will get is more something like this. Every researcher's nightmare, just walls of text. These are literally the first 7 rows of the data we have. And obviously, the challenge here is to make sense of these in depth and to gather the relevant insights from these open-ends. And that's what we at Caplena have been doing for many years. But now we have a new tool in our toolkit. And so without further ado, I want to get to the spice of today's session and have a look at this conversational interface in a live demo. So what everyone tells you do not do, I'm going to try today to have a live demo of this LLM-powered conversational insights interface. By the way, everyone, that if any questions pop into your head, please write them into the chat and I will do my best to answer them at the end of this session. So for all of you that will get this activated in the next couple of weeks, we will roll this out as in a private beta over the next couple of weeks. You will find a new button up here for existing projects where you can open the Conversational Insights interface. This interface will be more tightly integrated with our also soon to be released new dashboarding in the future. But for now, it is really a standalone interface with which we want to experiment on the kind of new insights opportunities that we can provide. The first step here is to choose the columns that we want to analyze. Here it's just reviews from Skytrax, and then we also choose the a rating column, which is quite important to be able to provide a quantitative aspect to this analyses as well. And what we start off with is that we get a summary from the LLM based on this existing data set. So it will tell us that the feedback for our imaginatory Caplena airline has about 10,000 rows based on 22 columns and covers various topics from beverages, check-in, pricing, and more. We now have different options. Either I can say, okay, I'm just going to sit back and let the system entertain me. And I can do so by just clicking this magic button a couple of times and let the system guide me through the insights in this project. It's going to start off on a very high level. Which are the most common topics? So obviously, punctuality is something that concerns a lot of people in airlines. You will have 26% of the people that mention this in a negative way. You will have the food and beverages on board. You will have friendliness of cabin crew, etc., etc. On the left here, also a bit more verbose version of the same, the most common positive and negative topics. A second thing I might be interested in is finding out which are topics with a high relative share of positive or negative sentiment. So the efficiency or speed of the cabin crew, of service of the cabin crew was mentioned overwhelmingly positive, the same for the flight experience in general and the appearance of the cabin. Overwhelmingly negative was the sentiment towards additional booking fees, no surprise, and also the payment methods were mentioned entirely in a negative way. The next step we want to do is be a bit more quantitative in how big the impact of these topics is on our overall satisfaction. And for that purpose, we run a driver analysis. One thing we can do is we can look at the impact of certain topics on the overall satisfaction, or on the, let me be more specific here, on the satisfaction of a single respondent. This is similar to what you will find in the current version of our dashboarding. So we can say, for example, if a person mentions the additional fees in their response, this will impact their score by minus 1.5 points. But of course, we want to go one step further here, and that's why we have introduced a new kind of analysis, and that is a simulation of the NPS or satisfaction score based on the entirety of the mentions of that topic. So how to read this is, if everyone that mentions food and beverages in a negative way currently could be convinced that they should be happy with the food and beverages on board, this would move the NPS score by 3%, which is, I think, quite considerable, given that we have a lot of topics here. So how many topics do we have? We can ask the system. I think it's something like 50, 60 different topics that we have here. And if the LLM decides to respond, then I'm sure it will confirm that in a second or two. So 59 distinct topics that we are tracking here and that the system is making sense of. And maybe one last, just sitting back insight I want to present. Now that we have figured out which are the topics that have the most impact, I want to see how do they correlate with other data in my other variables in my data. So specifically, I'm having a look here at the food and beverages topic, as it was the topic that drove the NPS most significantly. And I can then look at the other variables to see for which airlines, for example, were people especially happy or unhappy with the food and beverage selection. Or I can have a look at territories. Interestingly, in the Americas, people seem to be disproportionately unsatisfied with the food and beverages, whereas in Asia, either people are just generally more or less picky, or the service of food and beverages on board is better than in the Americas. So this is the one mode we can use this conversational insights interface with, but of course, we also have the option to ask prompts. And this is one of the really interesting use cases where we can dig deeper into the data. For example, I could ask, what do people say about sandwiches? And the cool thing about this is that sandwiches was not actually defined as a topic in our project here, but that it is a topic that is part of the food and beverage category, but not specifically defined as a topic in our data. And the assistant here will be able to sift through the data and give me the relevant verbatims nevertheless, and give me a qualitative summary of the results here. So here it says the one passenger who had a positive experience with a reindeer sandwich, for example, quite an interesting snack, I'd say, and other people mentioning their barely thawed ham and mozzarella sandwich, etc., etc. So this is the first glimpse at the conversational insight interface I wanted to give you. Now let's switch back to the presentation and quickly summarize what can we now actually do with this kind of interface and where are its limits. What you can do with this system is you can get qualitative summaries, samples, and counts for existing topics. What you can also get is qualitative summaries and samples for non-existing topics. So the sandwich example I mentioned before, if you want to deep dive on something that you haven't previously had as a topic. And it's also possible to do quantifications based on our analyses that we have defined in the system. So currently that's mostly driver analyses or correlations, typo here, double R, with other variables in our system. But it's also important to stress the limits of these kind of systems. So what it cannot do is it cannot perform any arbitrary analyses that you ask it to do. If you tell it to do a correlation or a I don't know, simulation of some kind that is not currently defined in the system, it will not be able to do so. Second thing it will not be able to do is do evaluations across different projects on Caplena. And finally, of course, it will not be able to access data outside of Caplena or data that you have not uploaded. So this is just a pointer that it makes sense to also upload additional variable closed questions, demographics with your data to be able to make use of these correlations and advanced analyses. Now, let's spend 3 or 4 minutes on how this works, just for you to understand a bit better on what you can do with these kind of systems. The challenges that we have faced when developing this are quite important, I think, to visualize what is possible with this. So one big challenge with these LLMs is context length. So how much text can you throw at it for it to still be able to make sense and understand it? The modern LLMs, or specifically GPT-4 preview that we are using here, has a stated context length of over 100,000 tokens, where a token is maybe on average about 3 characters. But we have realized that in practice, and we have tested this relentlessly, the context length, which is practical, is significantly lower, because if you go towards very large pieces or chunks of text, there is quite a high chance that the LLM will forget what the initial question was and just blabber on about something, or it will not be able to really retrieve the information from these long blocks of text if you pass it too much information at once. A second challenge we have been dealing with is laziness, also something that some of you might have experienced when dealing with LLMs. If you ask it something, it will tell you what it could do. So it says, I could attempt to find such feedback, but it doesn't actually do so. So this sometimes it needs a little more nudging. And finally, a third challenge, and I think this has also been apparent in the demo before, speed. The speed is quite different depending on the time of day, on the phase of the moon. And sometimes things work very quickly, and sometimes things take a bit longer. And I think speed is an underestimated feature. I'm going to get to that a bit more in a minute. But the biggest challenge that we have had, and I think also the question burning on your mind, is how about reliability? Is the data, the results that it provides, are those really reliable? Can I depend on them? And this has been a big part of our effort. And it has really taken some effort here to tame the beast. The beast being GPT, and GPT, as we know it, is very happy to provide any kind of number or insight you ask it for. It will do everything to provide some kind of number. And oftentimes we have seen it create some approximations with more or less basis. But we don't want it to do that. We have at Caplena always had the aspiration to provide high quality, dependable results that you can really act upon, and not just some, back of the envelope calculations. So we actually wanted to prevent GPT from providing these self-done analyses and only report the numbers that really come out of our analysis engine. So how does it work below the hood? How it works is that GPT mostly acts as a translation engine for queries coming from the user. So when you enter something in the front end, it's processed by our backend, and then this text query is sent to Microsoft Azure running the OpenAI models. The OpenAI models then translate this unstructured query into a structured query and pass it back to our analysis engine, which then fetches the relevant verbatims or fetches the relevant counts or does the relevant driver analysis. So all the quantitative parts come from our engine, and the translation and the qualitative summaries, they come from Microsoft Azure through OpenAI models. As I have mentioned Microsoft here, just one very brief mention of the compliance and privacy topic. The reason we are using Microsoft Azure and not OpenAI directly is that we very deliberately want to make sure that data never leaves the EU. We have a lot of customers in Europe where privacy is a very high priority, and so it is for us. So we want to make sure data stays in the EU, and also the data will not be available to OpenAI. It will not be used to improve OpenAI or Microsoft products or LLMs. Now that we understand how this works, the next question comes up. And I think this is a really interesting one. So the question here is this merely a new interface, or is it really a new kind of insights generation mechanism that we are on the cusp of seeing here? And I hear some of you say, well, isn't it just a wordy dashboard more or less? It's like the same charts with a bit more qualitative words around it. And my answer here is, on the one hand, yes, these LLMs are not able to suddenly magically do any new kind of analysis, any new kind of quantitative analysis that wasn't possible before, maybe besides this qualitative aspects. But on the other hand, I do think that they offer the chance to really revolutionize the way we work with insights and the level of depth we will get to. And the reason for that thinking here, or for my opinion on this, is that it has the potential to work much more the way we think. And the keyword I want to mention here is the train of thought. So I want to make an example. Let's say we are looking at punctuality, and we want to ask the question, how does punctuality relate to the traveler class? What's the share of positive or negative mentions based on the traveler class for this specific topic? Now, what we would traditionally do if you use a system like Caplena, which you hopefully do, is you head into a dashboard or you head into the charting mode, and you will you will get a glimpse of the data immediately, all the predefined topics, then categorize them or segment them by a categorical column. We choose the type of traveler here, which will instantly create a chart, and we will see the distribution between business, family, leisure, couple leisure, solo leisure customers. A nice segmented chart here, and then we also look at the share of positive and share of negative sentiments towards that topic. And now, question to you: what was the original question I posed literally 60 seconds ago? Try to remember. I'm sure that many of you have a great memory and many of you will remember, but I'm sure also some of you will struggle to find the question again that I had 60 seconds ago. And I think this is the revolutionary new possibility that is open through these conversational interfaces, because even though I have these advanced analytic systems, even if I'm a professional and it takes me only a minute or 2 minutes to find the result here I'm looking for, it still puts a lot of strain on my mental capacity. I need to constantly remind myself of what was the original question. How do I now get to that insight that I'm looking for? How do I get to that specific number? And the chance of me being distracted at some point is really, really high. And the difference between getting that number that I'm looking for within 10 seconds, just as a direct answer to my question, or whether I need to spend a minute or maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes if I'm not so familiar with the system on getting that answer, that might make all the difference from me just giving up at some point with the analysis, or really following my train of thought and going to the depth that I originally intended to do the analysis. So that's one reason for why I think these conversational insights interfaces can change the way we work and can really improve the results we get from them. And the second reason for them helping us to get to new levels is by changing the way how we as developers see these applications. So we have developed various analyses over the years. We have added new functionality, new charts, new dashboards, new insights options continuously. But we have never before been able to hear so directly what kind of questions you actually want to have answered. And this makes me as a developer, me as a product manager, and as a also company manager, really excited to hear directly from the users what are the questions that they want to have answered, because it will help us to become more focused and develop even better solutions, even more targeted solutions for your specific queries in the future. So with that, I'm getting towards the end of this webinar. I just want to stress one more thing. These conversational insights interfaces that we are talking to now, they don't live separate from your analysis. They are embedded into this life cycle of feedback analysis that you will already be following more or less if you're using our application, maybe also slightly different if you're using another application, but this is embedded into the entire analysis and quantification process. It's not a replacement for having a solid topic collection. It's not a replacement for doing a quality assurance to make sure the AI does what you want it to do. it's not even an entire replacement for the dashboarding and reporting. I think it's a new way of accessing, interacting with the data, and thinking about the data. But it's part of the bigger picture, and it actually relies very, very strongly on the results that you have produced with your existing topic collections and with the quality assurance that you or our customer success team have put into this system. So it's really an add-on to the existing analyses, not a replacement. And with that, I am at the end. I think this short and concise session has given you some insights and has made you as excited as it makes me to try out this interface and to give it a test drive. We will be starting with these private beta accesses over the coming weeks. We will start giving access there. And if you are interested in talking about what we can do for your feedback, we're of course also happy to discuss this in detail with you as well. So thank you very much.
Maurice, sorry also to interrupt, but there are many questions, so maybe we can take 2 or 3
Definitely.
questions before we close.
Sure, please let me know.
Okay, so there is, for example, one with the most upvoted was can the categories be redefined by human annotators?
So yes, very good question. So the categories, the topics, the themes, those are really based on the analysis you have done previously in the Caplena project. So there's no excuse to not have a good topic collection there, because this topic collection will also be that's the one you track over time, right? So this is really the basis for the analysis. And what the Conversational Insights interface offers you is to make it more fine-grained on demand. So taking this topic collection that you have, maybe you have a topic about, as I mentioned, food before in the airline industry, and now you want to go one depth deeper spontaneously. You are interested in looking at desserts, you're interested in looking at sandwiches, which is not a predefined topic, then you can spontaneously go into that. But the analysis really weighs on or depends on you having a solid topic collection before. It's not a replacement for that.
Thank you. Unfortunately, there are so many questions, or unfortunately, I won't be able to get to all of them, but maybe one more questions around sort of the timeline. Sort of, there is one, for example, from Søren, timelines for the beta and integration of this into dashboards.
Right. I mean, the integration, maybe first the beta, that's really something we want to start as soon as possible. We are working on some last quirks on very large projects. So as you or some of you, the participants know, we have projects ranging from 100 rows to almost 2 million rows, and it's always a challenge to make things work on everything reliably. So we're still in the last steps of getting the timing right for these 1-2 million projects as well. But I'm very optimistic that we will start giving access actually in the next couple of days, maybe in the next week at most, for the first enterprise and larger customers, to give this a test run. For the integration into the dashboards, that is not quite as fixed yet. I think it will be, over the next quarters, this will be a continuous exercise to get it deeper integrated with the dashboards as well. But we have deliberately added this as a separate interface for now, because it offers us a bit more freedom in experimenting and maybe quickly iterating, also based on the kind of feedback and the kind of questions that we see come up now from these tests we are doing. We're also thinking about other ways of integrating this. One idea is also having it as a Slack or a Teams bot, so that you can have a Teams or a Slack channel and you can query the Conversational Insights interface from there. Also something that is floating in our head, so a lot of ideas to further productize this.
Great. And then there is also a question regarding how to get into touch with us regarding beta testing. if there is any way to sign up to this.
Right. I think it probably we should send around a form link. We will do that probably in the next couple of days as well, so you can put yourself on the waiting list if you're interested in trying it out, and then we will gradually add as many people as possible to this beta in the coming weeks. But I cannot give an exact timing here today.
Great. There's again a question regarding sort of a lot of questions around GDPR and privacy. You mentioned it's not leaving the EU. There's one question from David. How GDPR friendly is it?
I think in GDPR wise, it's absolutely compliant. I mean, it doesn't. It never leaves the EU. It's not stored on Microsoft servers for any extended period of time. So GDPR wise, it is definitely compliant. Right. I think that's as much as we can say there. They don't use it to train their models. We have a DPA with them, of course, a data processing agreement, which is a requirement for GDPR as well. So that's the reason we have also put in this extra time to make this work through Azure and not directly OpenAI. I mean, this has been a big, an important effort on our side as well, and we are quite happy to have this solution now that we can offer.
And maybe one last one. If the data doesn't leave the EU through Azure, does that mean non-EU based customers can't use this?
It's not geo-fenced, so I mean, our entire service runs in the EU. Our data processing is entirely in the EU, but of course, we welcome clients from anywhere. I mean, we have clients from quite a few clients from the US. We have clients from Japan. We have clients from South Africa and Australia. So it's not limiting in any way to use for people outside the EU. I think it's also for people outside the EU, it can be an advantage because the EU is known for its very strict data privacy regulations, which is advantageous to everyone. So it's not geo-fenced, but there is currently no option to choose another data processing location.
Thanks. I think this is sort of the time we have for questions. The other ones I tried to answer, also some on the fly. We will try to get back to you on individual questions as well. Thank you all for asking so many questions.
Thank you all for being here, and we'll get in touch with you soon about the next steps. So have a great day, and bye-bye.
Bye.